Matt Rife, who I don't know his act per se.
Doesn't have one.
I don't know that. I've heard you say that.
Crowd work guy.
I feel like something that we used to understand and we don't anymore is that we used to see art and media through four very simple boxes, right? We used to see things as like good but not popular, popular but not good. There were things that were lucky enough to be both, and there were things that were too unlucky and ended up being neither. What counted as good was always kind of subjective, but we had a sort of shared trust in like cultural critics and commentators, you know? No single review ever like decided the truth, but when enough voices pointed in the same direction, we accepted that as like the closest we'd ever get to sort of informed consensus. You know, a perspective that was built on knowledge that most of us didn't really have. We understood that not all opinions were equal. To you, your opinion mattered more than anything, but to history, that was never going to be the case. And those boxes were never static, you know. Popularity could change, a flop could become a cult classic, good and bad could change. You know, Scarface was panned upon release, right? But reviewers looked back on it later on, and now it's deemed iconic even by them. We had a healthy relationship with that kind of fluidity, even if we didn't always agree with it. I'm not sure when it changed. I think a part of it came with the sort of like democratization of voices, and you know, everyone now has a platform to say what's good, and critical consensus has essentially lost all authority. A lot of people see this as a bit of a win. I don't, however. I think it's meant that all four of those boxes, good, popular, not good, not popular, the lot, have blurred to the point of being utterly meaningless. And I think this Marc Maron podcast run is exposing that collapse better than anyone has in years, obviously with a focus on comedy. He goes on here.
It was really, really compelling.
I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I expect more out of stand-up. So, you know, you can lower your bar and live in that and accept all that. And that's fine with me. I don't care. But to tell me that, you know, who am I to judge? I'm me to judge.
I think fascinatingly what Marc Maron is essentially exposing here is the death of taste, and worryingly like the death of wanting to have taste. It's no longer like good versus popular, it's just what sells and what does well and what doesn't. If it's popular, then it's good, and if it's not popular, then it's kind of irrelevant. Those are ultimately the only metrics that matter anymore. Reviews carry little to no weight whatsoever, you know. We still have our own opinions, but like to pretend that there isn't a culture that's obsessed with like box office, streams, ticket sales, and like audience metrics is really naive. Like, it's so strong. There's a line on that new JID album, and it goes a little something like this.
And fans argue about record sales like they record execs themselves. It's like we all under a spell, and still I hope this message reaches you well.
Like, clearly artists are feeling it too, you know. They're trying to reach you. They're trying to tell you something in this discourse has turned ugly. You know, the overlap between what was good and what was popular is now almost total, and it's completely killing nuance. You only have to look at rap beefs, right? The defense of Drake and Travis Scott in their respective like beefs recently were all about numbers. That was the biggest defense. It was about numbers. I feel like in comedy I've watched this shift happen up close, you know. I fell in love with American stand-up back in like the 2010s, and so I'd go to see it, I'd travel out there to see it. And so because I didn't live out there, it wasn't happening subtly to me. I would go, and every year I'd be like, oh, things are a little bit different than they were a year before, you know. And in that last 10 years, there's such an obvious change, right? The first is that I could get a ticket on the night when I was going in the mid 2010s. Now I have to book weeks and weeks in advance. But the real change is that like 10 years ago I'd see real fresh, real distinct, different voices every night. I'd see 5 comedians on stage and they'd all be radically different. Now it's wall-to-wall crowd work, and it's wall-to-wall anti-woke comedy work as well. So whilst my response here is personal, I do think I can be a little bit objective here and say that, like, comedy is the most popular it's ever been, and comedy clubs are booming for sure, but the art form is at its most limited. You know, the range is narrower, the voices are way less distinct, and the ideas are less daring. It's less creative, less inspiring, and in many ways feels like it's dying. You might be able to name a viral moment of comedy work from the last decade, but I don't think you could name a truly great special. And I ultimately think this traces back to our desire to like strip power away from critics and tastemakers. And I get it, because they could be snobs. I'm a snob. But in replacing them with like pure consumer choice, I think we've lost the balance that we used to have. Now we decide what's good by just buying it. And the result, therefore, isn't richer art. It's a cultural diet of what's easiest to sell you. And the proof of that is right in front of us every year.